The thing is the normal. I don't think normal was working for us. That's my perspective. I think normal for a lot of people was, a society of people who were unhappy in their careers to begin with. People who were hiding situations in their marriage because they could go apart for hours. Now they're being forced to confront these situations, right? So normal got us sick. Normal is where this came
Mm.
from. So I don't know if normal was the best thing, but we're going to go back and create a new normal. And in that normal, you will be different. And that's the scary thing. The identity of who somebody is it's been shaken, right? So some people who had the job, well, now who am I without this job? Or the
Mm.
relationship, who am I without this relationship? I mean, sports athletes who
Mm.
can't play sports, who am I without this sport right now, right? So there's going to be a lot of transitions that most people were being forced to do, like they're having to be reactive to it.
I'm
No
so
problem.
happy to connect with you
You as
finally.
well. Yeah. Sorry about the last time. My apologies for it was a weird, like at a double booking and then just said it sucked. I apologize.
No problem. I'm so used to it. I've had to be flexible.
Thank you.
But I was so excited to talk to you. I don't think there's a better time to talk to someone like you because you can help guide us in, trying to shift and embrace the uncertainty that we're going through right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of the thing I do. As that's
So
one of the weird superpowers of mine.
if you can first introduce yourself and
Yeah.
let our UK audiences. I have some people who are out in Kenya, so
Mhm.
it's a global audience.
Awesome. Yeah. So my name is Anthony Trucks. I hail from not Antioch, Walnut Creek, California. I grew up in Antioch, but I live in Walnut Creek, California. And the thing that I do in this world is I teach people how to upgrade how they operate to elevate their life and business. And really, it boils down to elevating their thoughts, perspectives, actions, reactions. Like, how do I handle proactive and reactive shift like we're experiencing now? And then how do I optimize things in my life to be able to have more joy, more peace, more perspectives that allow me to be at better ease and to have more success in business, which is one of the areas I do. So yeah, this is one of the things that a lot of people struggle with is when things are put on their plate that they weren't anticipating. How do they handle that? How do they find the opportunity and then attack the opportunity, we'll call it, and then get to a point where they come out better on the back end. And so for me, it's been one, like my life has always been this. And so this is like, oh, this moment in time was great for me to lean into because I know how to do these things well.
Right. So does that mean that when people around you are panicking, you're kind of the calm in the
Yeah.
storm?
Yes. My wife is like that. So my wife, she'll freak out. And I'm the one that like everything goes like it slows down. Now I play professional sports, play professional football. And so when I played at that level, like the game is always going fast. So not only I already had a knack for it, but like you're conditioned to it because you can't freak out in the middle of high intensity, high pressure. Like you have to be focused. So when things speed up, my brain kind of slows things down. I'm like, oh, and I can just navigate it smoother and I don't freak out. And it does help other people because they get to see what it looks like, and then it allows me to actually understand and have more of an empathy for what they're going through because I can see it differently. Because I'm like, oh, I see why you're acting that way, and so like I'll try to give them a new perspective, and they can go, oh, okay, well, so the next time they have a similar moment, they don't have to be so high in emotion and freak out and lose control as much. So yeah, it's something I've weirdly been conditioned to navigate well, is be the calm guy in the storm.
I was going to ask you actually if it was your pro athlete background that has conditioned you, but how are you then able to relate to highly emotional people who get swayed by, you know, things or factors outside themselves?
Yeah, I'm not devoid of emotion. I think that's really what the thing to keep in mind is when emotion gets high, our intelligence and processing cognitively pretty much slows down. We get really mad and say things we don't mean, or we get really happy and
Right.
make decisions that we regret. And so what essentially I do is the emotion does spike, but it doesn't turn into something where I'm taking an immediate action into it. It's like it spikes, and then I'm like, okay, I can process in my own head how to calm, how to get my nerves back down to think, okay, what would my calm brain do in this moment? And then I can take better control the next moments of my life. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's also, I mean, there's times when I freak out. Like, I'm human too. Like, I'm not every single time something happens, like 100%. Every time something goes, crazy, I'm always under control. Like my kids
Mm.
can piss me off. Like, my kids may do something, they're like, oh, or like
Yeah.
something, like you get in a car accident, you're like, what just, oh, so you can get there. But I do come back to earth faster than most people. So I know what it's like to experience it, but I also have the controls to bring it back down to a manageable level.
You talk a lot about identity, and I
Mhm.
think that's a big thing, because a lot of people now are not just living with uncertainty, but we kind of now have an understanding that things are not going back to normal.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people will be losing jobs. Some people, their relationships might look
Mhm.
different
Yeah.
after this lockdown.
The thing is the normal. I don't think normal was working for us. That's my perspective. I think normal for a lot of people was, a society of people who were unhappy in their careers to begin with. People who were hiding situations in their marriage because they could go apart for hours. Now they're being forced to confront these situations, right? So normal got us sick. Normal is where this came
Mm.
from. So I don't know if normal was the best thing, but we're going to go back and create a new normal. And in that normal, you will be different. And that's the scary thing. The identity of who somebody is it's been shaken, right? So some people who had the job, well, now who am I without this job? Or the
Mm.
relationship, who am I without this relationship? I mean, sports athletes who
Mm.
can't play sports, who am I without this sport right now, right? So there's going to be a lot of transitions that most people were being forced to do, like they're having to be reactive to it. And identity plays this role because what happens is there's a certain, I call it an identity gap. There's a gap between who I am, what I have, and what's going on, and the identity of the person I need to be, right? Whether it's I need to be a better husband, better dad, better business owner, better athlete, whatever. I got to be better something. And in the gap, you'll see that it happens as most people are on one side trying to do the things this person does, but still trying to be this person, hang on to this identity that they were. And it's very difficult because it's not who you are. You need to be this person. And when you are this person, you'll just have all the things they have. So what I do is I work through like closing this gap. How do we close the gap between these two people? And a lot of that goes to like psychology and like some neuroscience and like understanding actions that tie to these processes. But for a lot of people, they're going to be met with this moment of like, okay, who am I right now? And what's beautiful about the moment is when you have that realization, if you think about it, who you are now, you built. We created. Sometimes we did it unconsciously. We just went through actions, family does this, or I did this job, I went in a path. But at a certain point when the realization hits of like, oh, well, I made this person, I'm the creator, I can create that. It's kind of it's kind of like a tree. If you think about a tree that has fruit, the fruit of the tree, like if a fruit piece, like a piece of fruit, like career falls off and dies, like we think we're the fruit and we shrivel up and die. And I'm nobody without this money and without the job, without that person. When really, like you're the tree. The
Right.
tree created the fruit. Like you created the job, you created the relationship, you created the body, you created the income. So go back and
Right.
nurture the tree. Nurture the tree. You can recreate your like architect a new identity and grow new fruits.
I think what's hard though is that how do you bear new fruit?
Yeah.
It because if you're, I mean, if to stick to that analogy,
Mhm.
you're birthing a new type of fruit, and that's what's hard about it, because I think what I was trying to allude to with saying that it sounds easy is that people think of identity as this ephemeral thing, that you can kind of just shed like clothes.
Oh no.
It's
No,
not, is it? It's such an integral part of who
it's
we
the core.
think we are.
It's the core of you. It's so a lot of it. There's actually studies that show that if I was to ask you who you are, your brain lights up and this starts telling you the conscious things. I'm an actor. I'm a singer. I'm a doctor. I'm a mom, a dad. The things they've got to conscious what you are, but where you actually exist is what's called the default mode network of your brain, the DMN, and that turns on when the rest of the brain turns off and you start daydreaming. You start thinking about your emotions and what do I think of this thing? You're not questioning it, just it starts to process and that lights up. So if you think about it, when I go on, like my brain turns on, I'm just in flow mode from the identity. So in fact, you are who you are when you're not thinking about who you are. It's my
Right.
actions, it's my reactions, it's my processing. And so it's the core root of you that you're not even like thinking is going on. So like when something happens, what's the first feeling I have, or first thought I have, or first emotion, or first action I take? That's part of who you are to do that. Like, Susan, you're always freaking out when that happens. Like, that's part of
Right.
Susan's identity, right? It's hard to shut that off. It's also tied to emotions. And so we all have we have 6 core identity drivers. And we have this identity in the middle of it. Think of it like a Venn diagram. And it's comprised of your beliefs and thoughts and actions. Those are the big piece of the Venn diagram. But then you have, with the beliefs and the thoughts overlap, your mindset. And so people have certain beliefs about the world, themselves, what's going on. You also have certain thoughts that are consciously running all the time. Now, if I believe I'm supposed to do something great in the world, but I keep questioning if I'm supposed to do it, well, mindset gets weak. I don't know, should I, the imposter syndrome, should I go out and do that? What if everybody looks at me funny? Like the mindset gets weak, so I can't access and go full. But even if you have a powerful mindset, like I had a powerful mindset, I played professional sports, but I damn near ruined my life after sports. Like I had a lot of craziness go wrong. So the mindset by itself is not the only thing you need. I know people who like to read The Secret, great mindset, but they sit in their couch and go broke. Like you need more.
Right.
So where your thoughts and actions overlap, you have this area where like, I think I'm supposed to do this. And then do I do it? And if I don't do it, I have poor habits. And with bad habits, I can't get anything done. I have, poor consistency. I know I'm supposed to get my workout in, but I don't get it in. And every day I'm gonna get it done tomorrow, and I never get what I'm supposed to have done. And then you have the one that's big and it's important. It's beliefs and actions. When I believe that I'm meant to do something on this planet and then I don't do it, I lose that chip on my shoulder. And when I lose a chip on my shoulder, I don't show up and fight for myself in the moments I need to get up and get that workout, or to fight for the job, or fight for the love, right? And what happens is, the smaller it gets, the more I feel like the less respect I have for myself, the less love I have for myself. And so what happens, if you think about someone in your life that maybe you love, you'll take a bullet for them. But if you don't love them,
Right.
like, what are you gonna do? Like, I don't care what happens. So what happens internally, we lose this. And so when we look at the identity, you say it's a core piece. The idea is to architect what I call your ideal identity. What are
Right.
your identity specific beliefs and thoughts and actions that it must have to operate as an actress, as an athlete, as a mom, as a coach? Like, what are the things? And then from there, what should the piece of your mindset be involved in? Like, if these are strong, what kind of mindset do you need to have? Where's it going to be stronger, as an athlete or as a mom, right? They're different. What kind of habits must you have? What kind of ego do you need to design and create? Because the ego is interesting in the sense of like a lot of my work's rooted in, like, where you're saying, like, how do we shift and like shed it like clothes? What it is you got to create and build that. So you inherently, to your soul, like without question, unequivocally, like, that's who I am. And it happens through what you create. So in fact, what you create creates you. When I build something, when I put my hands on something, I spend hours and hours and hours doing it. Not only do I get the skill of it, but I get the confidence in knowing, like, I am a master at that. And so when you've done that, your ego will show up in actions and protect that. For example, if somebody was to go to LeBron James and say, LeBron James, you suck as a basketball player, he can look back and say, I'm sorry, I've spent so much time in the basketball, the court and the weight room shooting hoops. Like, he's put all this time in to create the skill set that creates the confidence. So his ego will show up and say, no, no, no. Not only will it do that, but it'll show up in the actions of doing what he has to do when he doesn't feel like doing it, or fighting unconsciously. So if I'm a mom and someone challenges me as a mom, like, now I'm a mom, right? So I'll get up in the middle of the night and I'll change my crying baby's diaper, or I'll go and, I'll pick up, my kids' poop if they're sick, like whatever. I'm gonna do things that moms would do without even thinking about it. And so what happens is we look at other people who have the other side of the gap closed, and we say, man, they're special, like they're unique, and like, how do they do that? You go to somebody, how do you do that? And they just go, oh, it's just who I am. And the way they can do that's because they created over time. They built this ego that now the ego the actions are effortless effort. I just do these things because it's who I am. And that's how you cross that kind of that chasm, is like, now I'm this person who does these things, and the identity gets built over time. So yes, you can shed it, but like making that new fruit, it's a matter of going through the uphill climb of making it, but not just for the outcome and the achievement, but for the transformation of who I am now, to where what was difficult becomes easy.
Wow. It sounds, but that's kind of if you're creating your identity consciously, right?
Yeah.
You have to be super conscious about all of that and do a
Oh,
lot
very.
of digging.
It's a lot of work. Yeah. That's where it's not. That's why it's usually not an easy thing, because you're always met with identity walls where you do something. Or like I ask my clients all the time, like, we're going to do this thing. And they get down this path and like, oh, but I don't do this. And they start finding ways to procrastinate or find a new path or shiny object. It's like, no, face this thing. But it's not who I don't know. Because think about it. When you try something new, you're initially met with the realization that you're not very good. And that
Mm,
hurts. It's like,
yeah.
oh, I'm not very good. And it's like, we'll call it a 10 of pain. Like, ooh, so what do we naturally not want to do? I don't want to go do that again. So what I do is
Mm,
I step away and I find something else, but I'm still not there. So I'm like, no, take the lesson that you had, and I want you to take that and go do something again. But this next time, what was a 10? It's going to be a 9 this time. It'll still hurt, but not as bad. And it goes down and eventually gets to like it's a 6, 5, and it's a 0. But here's the special thing. At 0, it's not a matter of like, oh, I feel okay. I'm doing it without pain. Like, it's actually joy. It's like this thing I hated doing. I'm like, oh, I love doing it now. Like, I'm good at it, and it's now you become
mm,
this is ownership. What I mean, if it was like podcasting, interviewing, I'm sure you stepped in like, I don't know, I don't, oh, but then
yeah.
now you're like, oh, I love getting on these things and asking questions. This is great. Like, there's a joy behind it
Mhm.
that doesn't exist until you get in and you keep facing the same pain until it gets less than, and it becomes joyful for you.
So, do you think then most people who've had it easy their whole life, and then this is, let's say, the first crisis they're going
Mhm.
through,
Yeah.
that it's going to be harder than people who are constantly have had to overcome different crises?
Oh yeah. There's a statement I love. It's a smooth sea makes not a skilled sailor.
Mm,
So when I
true.
go into the ocean, like if I haven't battled the waves, I'm not a good sailor, right? And so there are things
Mm,
that I found are all relative. So what might be really easy to me could be really hard for somebody else, and I have to respect that, right? Because
right.
I've just navigated different hardships, and emotionally, it's the same. Even though for me, I'm like, it's not so bad, but for them, emotionally, it's a crazy high, and it is harder. But the thing is when they face that, it's the only way to get stronger is to stay in it and to face it again. It's just like lifting weights. If you've ever exercised, at first, like, oh man, I can't lift these 20-pound weights. Well, what do? Walk out of the weight room? No. You start with the 2s and the 5s and the
Right.
7s, and you build a strength to where now 20 eventually becomes light. You're up to 50s at some point. So it's a matter of building over time to get to the weight of life, but it's by staying in the weight room and doing it, not walking away and never going back.
And is the way to stay in the weight room realizing there's no way it's going to be easy? Just
Yeah.
accept that.
Yes, I mean, well, it'll be easier, but at some point it's never easy. Because I mean, if I could lift the 20s one time, maybe I could lift it 20 times now, but I could still get tired with the same weight. Like you still can in some way, but it
The
it
tough
eventually will
thing
always be
is,
hard.
it you don't feel like if you go to the gym, it
Hmm.
almost feels like it gets harder.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
Like the first time you say I'm going to make a change, you
yeah.
might be buoyed and feel like, okay, I'm energized, I'm gonna do this.
Hmm.
And then you do the workout and the next day your muscles are shot, and it's actually much harder than you thought. And it
Yeah.
almost feels like for a while things are going to constantly be testing you and testing your commitment.
Hmm. Yeah, and it always
Um,
was. I think that's the beauty of life, though. With the weight room, it is like you do get sore, but after a while, I mean, I trained, for a lot of years. After a while, it takes more to make you sore, and
yes.
you get less sore. Like I do the same weight, I'm not sore. But here's the thing, which is with all life. Whenever I get stronger, I start thinking of like, what more can I do? Right? Because I want to test that boundary. So in life, we get stronger. It's like it's like being at the bottom of a staircase and being like 7 inches tall. I can only see that one step, and I get up there. I'm like, oh, there's more steps, and you keep climbing steps. And after a while, you're like, now you're always seeking that next new level. So it never gets easy because you're exposed to so much more you never knew was at that next step. So it's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is here. Oh, let me try this. And this is hard. Oh, this is here. So there's always those next tiers. There's always gaps you'll find. I think that when I say this closing of gap, it's like a finite. It's like a moving finish line. Like I do close the
Yeah.
gap, and I'm like, oh, there's a new gap to close, and oh, there's a new one. And it's a consistent. Like I'm learning, so that I can learn what more I need to learn. Like they talk about that bubble of here's what I know, here's what I know I don't know, here's what I don't know I don't know. There's this
Right.
big, so every time you get to the next tier, it's like you're learning more of what you don't know.
So you talk about these three phases of identity shift, right?
Mhm.
So the first phase is to
Yeah.
see what it is you want to become.
Mhm.
And then the shift is the hardest because it's lovely imagining what you want and who you want
Yeah.
to be and what changes you want to make.
Mhm.
So the shift part is the part you're saying is going to be really hard. You're
It's the work.
overcoming, who you've been for so long.
Mhm.
And then now, how do we do the sustaining part?
Yeah. So the C part, one thing with the shift's the work. The problem is for a lot of people, they start doing the shift work without the C work. And then it's kind of like if you spend all this time climbing this ladder and I get to the top of the ladder, huffing and puffing, I get up and I go, oh, wow, wait, the ladder was leaned against the wrong building. Like
Hmm.
people do the stuff that they want to do, but they usually don't do the stuff they need to do. They don't ask the questions they're supposed to ask because we sometimes in the C phase, we don't do the work to realize like the thing I want to focus on or should focus on, like that scares me. It's difficult to own or accept. But once you do, you can move on. If not, it's like you're trying to you're moving against like an invisible rope. You'll never move past it, right? Once you've done that, you've done the work and you've made that shift. People do revert. Like unfortunately, like even in like let's call it the jail system, recidivism. I'll go in and I'll come back out and I'll go back in. Like, why did you just caught you did the thing? Don't go back to jail again. Or I'm in a relationship that's horrible and I get out of it. I go back into one just like it. And it's like, why do we
Hmm.
keep? And so what happens is few people make the adjustments, make the change, and then are always perfect and stay on the path. There's got to be a consistent moving. And so that sustained phase is actually drive, hive, and thrive. So the idea is when I'm driving, I've got to think, am I still staying on course? Have I made a U-turn on accident or am I still driving in the same direction? And do I still have the drive to do this? Because there's also people who reach a next tier and say, man, I don't even like doing this, but I'm going to keep doing it because I've already been doing it. Oh, but. So it's like, are you still there? Then the next thing is hive. And if you think about a hive like bees, they make sweet honey. Like I want my life to be sweet honey. And for me, in that perspective, I got to have a hive of people around me, from my friends to my family to my colleagues. And I got to nurture relationships and have a group of people that I may go to for certain questions or concerns or problems or outlets. But I got to have a hive of people around me that stretch me, that help me grow by being just in their proximity sometimes. And then thrive is unique because thrive is like to do the best. And for me, I'm a guy that realizes that at a certain point, when you've succeeded, if you want to get that same rush that you had to succeed, it doesn't come by you just doing more of what you did for yourself. It comes by giving back. Like if I went and bought 10 hamburgers, like I'm hungry, I'll eat the first hamburger, I feel good. Two hamburgers in, like that's kind of two hamburgers. By like three hamburgers, I'm like I can't eat another hamburger. How do I feel good again? Give it to the other guy who's starving. So if I can
Hmm.
pass that on to somebody, now I can get a similar, like, okay, I'm feeling good handing hamburgers out with a full belly. So when I get to the thrive, it's like, now that you got a full belly, what can I do to have you pass that on so you can continue feeling good about your life and doing more?
Right. I think what was really interesting about your background is you've had such a tough life. And I think that can serve to really inspire people who've had a difficult childhood
Mm,
and see that childhood as part of their identity
yeah.
and see that that is their, maybe they see that as their lot in life. What
Mhm.
would you say to people like that, people who have weren't given a break to begin with? How did you make that shift for yourself?
Yeah, man, I broke my life. I think that's really what happens. So I grew up in foster care. I was given away at 3 years old, went through a really heinous system of like, torture and beatings and just weird stuff. Adopted by an all white family. So I had like the racial separation. So identity's always been this weird, like, who am I kind of thing, all the way, to overcoming odds, to playing in the NFL and being on TV and growing big businesses and doing some cool things. But the realistic portion of it, for me, was understanding along this path, like how I needed to upgrade Anthony. right? Because at one
Mm.
point I'd lost my marriage, I'd lost my family, and my business fell apart. I was out of shape, and like I'd lost my professional career in football, like the most heinous, like all within like a year period of all my identities just being stripped from me. And so what happens is I was walking through life essentially trying to like act like nothing was going on. And I was still operating as the Anthony who had grown up, but I needed this next update. If you kind of think of us like computers, and I'm a metaphor guy, if you haven't noticed it, I think in pictures, that's just how my brain works to tell stories. But like a computer, I'm on a computer, you're on a computer or a phone, and at some point, like something pops up, says, "Hey, do you want to update your computer?" And you go, "No, snooze. I got stuff to do. I don't want to do that right now. It's gonna take too much time. I gotta download the stuff and upload it, and I gotta sit there and wait for it to happen. I don't want to do all that." So eventually, you keep snoozing it, like bing, bing, snooze. The programs, they start slowing down. My web browser may crash. The systems, they start glitching, and eventually, like, oh, I'll just open in safe mode so I can keep going. I'm gonna cut everything else off, and I try to function here, but you don't have the full functionality. Eventually, you get those spinning wheels of death. Nothing moves, and it just crashes. You're like, all right, well, I guess I have to go and get it updated. So you go and you take the time. It sucks, and download and upload it. And so, as human beings, we're very similar. The hardware is what we have every day. We wake up in the morning, this fresh new body for the day. But a lot of us are operating off software that's like Windows 95, like way in
Mm.
the past. So the programs in our life, they're slowing down because the updates of, hey, you need to be a better dad or a better mom. You need to be a better friend. You need to be a better sibling or daughter. You need to be a better, coworker. Like you need to take better care of your health. We keep snoozing all the updates. I don't want to deal with that. I don't feel like, because I don't want to download and find out what's going on and fix it. So we distract ourselves. We drink, we sleep around, we do drugs. And then eventually we're met with moments. Like I was met with a moment when I wanted to actually take my life. And I met with this moment of something's got to change. And so what you do, what I did is I stepped out of my life and I just took a big download. Like, what am I doing wrong? Like, why did my marriage fail? Why am I not being a present dad? Why is the business not going well? Like, download all the truth. And then from there, I could say, all right, I'm gonna go and upload back into my life better tactics, better strategies, better processes, better habits, better beliefs, thoughts, actions, better ego. Like I'm gonna put these things back in. And so as I started updating them, and it took time, and it's just as stressful as like waiting for a computer or thinking about the time spent. When I got to the back end, I just like a computer, once you update it, it runs smooth. Everything's good.
Mm.
I didn't have to go into I try to go into safe mode too. Like I'm gonna cut everybody off in safe mode. I'm just gonna be Anthony in here. Nothing works. And we update like, oh, now I can have better relationships. I can make more money. I can have more joy. I have better beliefs. Like I operate better. And so when you ask how do you transition from the hard life to a new life, it starts with that C is like, let me download. Like what I gotta figure out in that C phase and unpack and unload. Like what am I not seeing that's having a big effect on my life? And what do I do then upload into my life in the shift phase? What do I got to put back in that operates, whatever it is? And then sustain is how do I keep updating when the pop-ups come up? How am I staying
Yeah.
in tune with life?
But did you have to do that in therapy, or how did you do that?
Yeah, so I wish, to be honest, I wish I would have done therapy. No lie, I did it through a lot of hard conversations with myself and a lot of people. Like my wife at one point had an affair, and I had to go. Like I had conversation with her and the guy she had an affair with. Like I just went and started having just deep convos and making asks of people that were really hard. When I was a kid, when I was in foster care, they had me doing some therapy stuff. But when I got older, I wasn't against it. I at the time I could afford it. I was like also broke, so I was reading books, and I was just like,
Mm.
what would the next step be? And then I had these like interesting realizations of like, I have internal anxiety or darkness when I think of somebody, and I don't want that. I don't want to have that thought about that person when I think about them. So how do I fix that? Well, I got to talk to this person. So a lot of it came with just having communication with people. Even if it was with myself, I meditated a lot, prayed a lot. I had to start spending time inside a head that I didn't want to be in, because we
Right.
all don't like being alone with a person we don't like. And if you don't
Mm.
like you don't want to be alone. So you're always with a friend on the phone, you're always watching a show, always on
Mhm.
social media, always drunk, or so when that's taking place, like you're not. So I just tuned it all out, and I had to spend time with a guy I didn't like and get to know him until I loved him.
That sounds really hard. It sounds excruciating,
You're
actually.
telling me it took like years. It took me like 2.5, 3 years to do all this. I'm not saying it happened overnight. We're talking time, like years
Right.
it took me to get there.
So that's the key. Be patient with yourself, right?
Yeah.
Don't think it's going to happen overnight. You
No,
can't get rid of it.
you can't. And I think what was also worse for me is I had no process back then, right? It was just me winging it. Whereas now, like with people I work with, I have a process I take them through that really is me unpacking the past of my experience and like psychology and neuroscience of how we all operate. So I make it
Mhm.
happen faster. So I can take what I did like in 2, 3 years down to like 4 months for most people.
And so that it sounds like it was really tough because you obviously went through abandonment stuff, right, as a
Yeah.
child.
Hmm.
And then with your wife doing that and
Yeah.
having to go through the forgiveness phase, all of that.
Hmm.
Um, and so how did you connect the dots for yourself? Books, right?
A lot of it
And
was
just
book.
meditating.
Yeah. And then conversations. I think we fail to comprehend that when we get into our own head about somebody else's actions towards us, we start to create a monster. Like Alfred Hitchcock, the famous director, he was known for not putting the monster on the screen because he assumed in your own head you could make a monster way worse than you could ever put on screen. So it was
Mm.
interesting in how like we take the same thing and we create a monster. And what I realized when I would have these conversations, I would come to find that I had this thought of like, how could you do this to me? You did this on purpose to hurt me. How could you hurt? Why would you want to hurt me? The monster, right? But then when you sit and talk and have this realization, it's like, oh, I wasn't giving my wife what she needed in the marriage. I was neglecting my wife. I was gone at work 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. What she did for herself. If anything,
Mm.
she was just neglectful of my feelings, right? Or she was just being selfish, if anything. But it wasn't malicious.
Mm.
Like, so with my mom, my real mom, when she gave me away, it took a lot of years to realize, like, wow, my mom wasn't trying to put me into a system hoping I'd get hurt, you know? She was doing what she needed to do to alleviate her stress. It sucks that I was a byproduct, was my life, but most people who've done things that hurt me weren't to hurt me. It was for them and they hurt me in the process, unfortunately.
Yeah. And do you feel like the past comes up for you still? Do you think so? What I'm trying to ask is there a way to heal the past so that it doesn't keep coming back up? Or is that it stays with you forever?
You know, I mean, I'll give you my perspectives. There may be studies on this that I haven't read yet, but for me, I don't think it ever goes away completely. I never forget. Like, I'm now back with my ex-wife. We have an incredible marriage. Like, love my wife to death. Like, I don't even know how to explain. Like, I put my marriage up against anybody in the world. Like, but the reality is, it's like, do I never think about the fact that she was with another man while we were married? I'd be sitting here lying if I told you, oh, never think about it. But the thing is I have tools to process it through in the emotional state of it and like, oh, that's not going to benefit the next moments of my life. It happened. It sucked. I don't take that away from her. She apologizes. We get that. But if I stay in the emotion of what that is, I ruin the rest of my life. I would ruin what I've built. And so I don't think it goes away. But I think what comes in is at that time when it happened, I didn't have the tools to manage it. Whereas now I do. So when it
Yeah.
pops back up, it doesn't have the same emotional spike. It comes with different understandings. And so it's there, but it also is a trigger of like, okay, if I never want that to happen in my life again, what do I got to do to be a better human, better husband? How do I have to communicate? What are things that I need to make sure, like, if she's not doing something or she is doing, how do I have that hard conversation now? It's an update coming in like, Aunt, something's off. You were going to say something about it? I could be like, no, not at all. Or I could be like, hey, love, I got this feeling. I don't know what's going on, but like, what is this? And like, we'll have a conversation. Why are you asking? Like, I'm just curious. It means nothing. I need to not bury it, you know? And so we'll have the conversation and then it moves on. And that honestly never happens for us anymore. We're like 4 years deep. Early on though, it did. Whether she was gone and not saying something, that was a trust thing. It was like, what's going? But again, these are things that I now have tools to navigate and I don't snooze the alerts anymore.
Right. I was going to say to you, I find it's really hard for people. The personal stuff is hard because it's not something you can work through alone. And sometimes, the other person might not be ready to have that hard conversation. Sometimes the hard conversation needs to happen with a boss or a colleague.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you, if they're not ready, how do you take ownership of your side of things and heal for yourself?
You can plant a seed and you water it over time. So like sometimes in order for like you got to realize that you are in control of you and that's all you're in control of. And so maybe I want a boss to do something, say something, and if I'm married to the pace at which it has to happen on my terms, I'll always be let down. So the idea
Mm.
for me is like I realize that somebody else may have their own things going on, which all of us do, and they got to navigate that stuff. But for me, like I will plant a seed of like, hey, I have this thing going on. I want to have a conversation with you about it because it's eating me up a little bit, but I also don't want to fight about it. Whenever you feel like you have the space or the time, like love to sit down and talk about it. If it's a boss, same thing. Like, hey, it's a conversation I think we need to have. I don't have any kind of fight. I don't want to place any blame, but there's some things I feel like I want to discuss with you. So when you have some space, some time, love to sit down and talk. And then what you do is in those conversations, realize that you may be with somebody who is not in a space to control their emotions perfectly yet. The worst thing that we can do is escalate. So when I get into a conversation, I say something, they spike up without being condescending. You say, hey, look, I promise you, I get that you're getting angry. That is not my intention at all. I'm just trying to have a calm, logical conversation. If we need to reschedule, like that's totally okay also. But like, just know I really want to get to the heart of this because my intention is to have a closer relationship. So I understand you're getting bothered, and so okay, can we just how can we calm it down? We can have a calm conversation. But you do it in a
Mhm.
way that lets them know, like, okay, this person's intentions are down here, and then you're gonna help guide them to bringing their emotions back down, and then it gets to logic, and then you have those breakthroughs people talk about because it's there. It's just a matter of it. Some people are way harder than others. Don't get me wrong. This isn't like a perfect science. It takes time to navigate another person's emotions. So it's a matter of like, but starting with the intention of what you want to have, and then in the moment when you're first met with the moment of it could spike up or go down, what you do in that moment matters immensely. Because if you spike it, the next time they're not going to want to come back down. But if you come in and quell it and bring it down, you keep doing that. Like it works the second you go up, we're up here now. And it's way harder to have you both come back down.
Right. We'll put links for on the video for people to go to your website where there's a lot of stuff really for people to start to find out about how they can use these tools. I was going to ask you, what books would you say people should read that helped you make the shift for yourself?
Man, one of the good books in the beginning was Stephen Covey's Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. It's a really good
Hmm.
book. It's still on
Yeah,
my thing
I
over
read
here.
it. I read it many years ago, actually.
Yeah, I like the way that he breaks the concepts down. Then there's also Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. There's
Mm.
Habits by Charles Duhigg. It's a good book. These are
Mhm.
books that I read back then. And then The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. There's some
Mhm.
good books. They're conceptual books that gave me a non-spiritual way to look at the brain. Now, I'm a
Mhm.
man of faith, don't get me wrong, but I want to like look at how do we think or process or what's going on from a non-spiritual way. Because I feel like spirituality is a phenomenal, powerful piece of me and my life and my heart, but I also want to understand how can I have better control of me outside of that realm, more like the internal Anthony realm. And those books gave me good tools to do that.
Right. And are there any rituals or any practices that you do daily
Mhm.
to kind of put yourself in a good state?
Yeah, I meditate. I have this one meditation by Wayne Dyer. I don't know what it's called, but I just downloaded it. It's like 20 minutes of a lead meditation. I pray. What else do I do? I have like affirmations I state for like finances and just like life. I have like alerts that pop my phone every day that tell me how to serve, like remind me every day how to serve from my heart for the people. If they win, you win. Like there's certain things I do every day. So there's always something that's anchoring me back to why I'm doing what I'm doing and how to do it. Because throughout the day, every day, things will happen. And if you don't have an anchor, it's like a ship that gets pulled out to sea. You'll get lost in the waves. So I need to have an anchor at certain points of the day all the time that allow me to like stay anchored in the port so I know what I'm doing and I can get my things done as opposed to getting blown away into the wind.
Right. Oh, you've given us so much. This has been so interesting for me because I read your website, I watched the videos, but even so, I found that I got so much from it, from talking
Yeah.
to you. So I'm sure anyone who listens will really get a lot from it.
Awesome.
Thank you
Uh,
so much.
Very welcome. Yeah, that's all I try to do is hop on and serve some people.